Miami, Florida. Man, that's got a really nice ring to it. Welcome to South Beach, where not only is the weather great, but if you're a sports fan, there's tons to do as well. Shoot, look at the professional sports teams. The Miami Heat, they're not too far off from making the NBA Finals. And the Miami Marlins, they're in town as well if you want to watch some baseball, if you need that fix. But of course, no sports city is complete without professional football. And the Miami Dolphins, of course, they're a young team, a team on the rise, and they're the most exciting to watch in the NFL, arguably. But that being said, while everything looks good on the surface, that doesn't mean they're free from controversy. I mean, look at what just happened recently. The Dolphins being accused of purposeful tanking and point shaving, according to Brian Flores. And even more recently than that, you're talking about one of the scariest NFL moments that we've seen on television in prime time, nonetheless. And while that NFL and NFLPA investigation did not prove any wrongdoing, Roger Goodell knew that he couldn't just sit by and allow nothing to happen. So not only did that concussion protocol did of course change, but that nuclear option was also hit. For example, the owner, he's gone. The general manager, he's also gone as well. And most importantly, and what's notable to our story, the NFL roster that you know for the Miami Dolphins, it's been dispersed to the other 31 teams or outright released to free agency, triggering for the very first time since the early 2000s an expansion draft, the first that we've seen since the Houston Texans. Welcome to this expansion franchise series on Madden 23. Let's go ahead now and meet the players that will initially make up our expansion roster in the NFL. Now, before I go ahead and show you what we went with for our expansion roster, this is where I got my information from. It's from wolfsports.com. I will have a link to this down in the pinned comment section if you want to try this. And that was kind of how I went about picking this expansion roster. We will pick just one player from each of the 32 teams. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and see who we selected to be a part of our expansion franchise here on Madden 23. So we start with the Chicago Bears as we are looking at who we got in the expansion draft based off that article that I was talking about. We start with the Chicago Bears. We grab Nick Foles, who is going to be a bridge/mentor quarterback for us. He's 33 years old. He's a 10-year veteran, but he is a former Super Bowl champion, so it's nice to have that experience on a team that is going to struggle for a little bit, that's for sure. But he is a good mentor, and that's going to really help us in terms of maybe getting some trade value from him, as well as boosting that weekly training experience for the other quarterbacks at the position. That's going to be valuable when we're trying to grow our team. From the Cincinnati Bengals, we grab HAKEEM ADENIJI. He is a right guard who is pretty young. He is 24 years old. He's a 2-year player from the University of Kansas. Actually started in the Super Bowl last year, but definitely was exposed by Aaron Donald and that Rams defensive front last year. He doesn't have any tags on him necessarily, and he's a guy that he's kind of a shot in the dark. We'll see what ends up happening with him. He's got good strength, but he's got a lot of seasoning that he needs to get done. Needs to be better in terms of almost everything when it comes to pass protection, but he is young and someone that we could potentially develop. Staying with the offensive line, from the Buffalo Bills, we have John Felicio, a 30-year-old from the University of Miami. That's the Miami Hurricanes, and he's someone that is going to be starting at that center position right away. He is someone that is capable of being an NFL starter, albeit a low-end NFL starter. Has some decent attributes. I certainly love his strength. He's got 86 strength and 85 awareness as well to go with it. Not to mention he does have solid stamina as well. He is a bridge player, so we should be looking forward to getting a center eventually. He is 30 years old, so don't know how much longer that he does have, but should be a decent NFL starter in our first year in this expansion. From the Arizona Cardinals, meanwhile, we selected Eno Benjamin, running back from Arizona State. He comes down to Florida, and listen, the scheme may be more for a power back, but he provides a nice little lightning and thunder combination. He's going to be our lightning running back, someone that can very well be our home run hitter. And the nice thing about him too, he has half decent catching out of the backfield. His catching is not terrible for a running back. And again, another thing that I like about Eno Benjamin, only 23 years old. We can develop him. He's a cheap player and someone that I'm looking at as, hey, we can go ahead and we could possibly work with him for the future moving forward. Meanwhile, from the LA Chargers, we end up grabbing Brian Beluga, and this is a huge pickup for us. Yes, he's 33 years old, so, how Madden has is that anyone over 30, they do end up declining relatively quickly, but really solid right tackle. He at least can sit in and, be a temporary starter. He also has that mentor tag as well, so that will help with garnering some experience at that tackle position as well. Not to mention, he is someone that is the 11th ranked right tackle, so he is probably one of the best starters that we have on this team, and giving Baker Mayfield a chance to be successful, I think that's really important because I think he could be our long-term answer at quarterback, but we won't know if he's always going to be throwing or running from his back. Moving on, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, who we picked from, and we ended up grabbing Anthony Hitchens, who I'm pretty happy about overall. Well, he is a little undersized at 6 foot. He is pretty good at stopping the run, and that will be vital in terms of trying to control the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the football. He is a middling starter. He's a number 33 ranked middle linebacker in Madden right now with that 77 overall. But he is a bridge player, so someone that we'll also need to think about grabbing in terms of, okay, we got to figure out who the future is at middle linebacker, and it's going to be apparent when I show the other middle linebacker that we've ended up selecting, but he'll be a good temporary starter for us. But as for our next few selections, we end up going to the wide receiver position. We start with the Indianapolis Colts. We grab Mike Strachan, who will be our wide receiver 4. He's a 25-year-old from the College of Charleston. He is a normal depth guy, but is relatively young, sitting at 25 years old. Someone that we could develop for the future. And his best attributes does include being a physical wide receiver. Someone that we could maybe go towards like throwing a go route, because his route running leaves a lot to be desired. But these other 2 wide receivers, man, I am ecstatic about that they were available. We got Curtis Samuel from the Washington Commanders. He was the odd man out, so we end up grabbing him. He's going to be our number 2 receiver. 26 years old. He's hailing from wide receiver U at Ohio State. Elite speed, and is a pretty complete player for the most part. Doesn't really have a weakness in his game. Would like to see him touch up the route running a little bit, but that being said, I really love that we are bringing him onto this football team. We're giving Baker a weapon. And speaking of weapons, this is probably going to be our best player on the squad. We get Amari Cooper from the Dallas Cowboys. Superstar X Factor. He's 28 years old, hailing from Alabama. And Amari Cooper, man, elite receiver. 91 speed, 95 catching. The route running, phenomenal. Spec catch, phenomenal. He is a superstar player, and we're going to use him, man. We are definitely going to utilize him. Giving Baker a chance, man. That's all we need. And the receiving core is one of the few things about this team that I'm not worried about. But for the Miami Dolphins selection, we ended up going back to offensive line. We end up grabbing Robert Jones here, who is only a 63 overall, but he's also only 23 years old. So he's in a similar spot that HAKEEM ADENIJI is in terms of, yes, he's not good, but we can still develop him, and he can potentially turn into something down the line. We'll have to see how he ends up doing as his career progresses, but unlike Robert Jones, we will be able to at least develop somebody behind him. Up next, we have the selection from the Philadelphia Eagles, and we end up grabbing Patrick Johnson. He is a 23-year-old from Tulane, so a Baton Rouge native born. Patrick Johnson, someone who we can also develop, and he does fit our scheme well. He wants to be a speed rusher, and that's what I want him to become. He's got some things to work on. His power and finesse moves need some work. Block shedding, play recognition, awareness. These are all things that need to be worked and developed. But that being said, though, this is also somebody that is extremely tough. He's got 92 toughness, and we need that kind of toughness to kind of be a windfall for the fact that, okay, our defense is not going to be good. That toughness can make up for it, and he's still really young, only 23 years old. We can build off of that and give him some time to better himself. Remaining on the defensive side of the football, we have the Atlantic Falcons selection. We end up selecting Kendall Sheffield, who will end up being our number 2 corner. And Kendall Sheffield, he's sound. He's hailing from Ohio State. The 26-year-old is a little undersized, 5'10", 210 pounds, but does specialize in being that man-to-man cover. Does have pretty good athleticism, 93 speed, 93 excel, 92 agility, which is good to see, but needs to work on those coverage abilities. In the low 70s, you don't like to see that. His awareness is not very good either, not to mention he can tackle. So we'll see what Kendall Sheffield can become. He does have a couple more years to where we can develop, but I do kind of see him as a stopgap. Maintaining the trend on defense, however, we go to the 49ers selection, and we get ourselves a pretty nice veteran here. Dee Ford, he's a star dev, hailing from Auburn, does have really good speed rushing abilities, also is a solid power rusher as well, and he's someone that, you know, comes in, he's got 84 speed as a defensive lineman. That is really impressive to me. So he has the nice athleticism. Again, has to be a bridge player for us though, because he is starting to get older, 31 years old. So I do expect him to decline pretty sizably as this series goes on, but he is a nice temporary starter for us. Going back to the defensive secondary, though, we go to our New York Giants selection. We end up grabbing Logan Ryan, who is also available. He may be 31 years old. He does have that star dev. And listen, we may be an expansion franchise, but we are also going to, try to compete as best as we can, since we want to be successful. We want to be able to eventually work towards a Super Bowl title. So in order to start that thing from scratch, we got to go ahead and get some veterans that are going to create a positive winning culture for the future. And I think Logan Ryan fits that extremely well. But then our next couple of selections actually were for the tight end position. We'll start with who's going to be our starting tight end, Trevin Wesco, the 26-year-old from West Virginia. Them country roads, man. He could be a decent player. I like his size at 6'3". We could do something with that, but he does not have the ability to route run. That is my big problem and concern with him. I see him more as a blocking tight end, but we do have him listed as our starter, at least for the time being. Maybe tight end is something that we look at in the next draft. But then from the Jacksonville Jaguars, we end up selecting yet another tight end, and someone that I think will be a better for our passing game. We got Luke Farrell from the Ohio State. Huge weapon, 6'6", 258 pounds. This is what I'm kind of looking for. Solid speed. It does have a decent short route for a tight end as well, but like I mentioned earlier, can't really block that great. He's got 57 pass block, 62 run block. So Luke Farrell definitely leaves a lot to be desired, but he's a young player, only in his second year, and that's something that we can certainly work with as we're trying to get some more clarity at the tight end spot. Up next, we have Brady Breeze, who we got from the Detroit Lions. He is the 24-year-old from the University of Oregon, and only in his second year as well. He specializes in being that run support guy. Like I said, trying to control the line of scrimmage as best as we can. Decent speed, 87 speed, got a 79 pursuit as well, and he's someone that is able to stay healthy. He's got 91 injury to work with. He's also a scheme fit for what we want to do on the defensive side of the football, because we will run a 3-4 scheme, I feel like, and I think Brady Breeze will feed that well. We'll see how much we can develop him. He is only 24, so he has that on his side. But a player that I was excited to grab from the Green Bay Packers, we got Za'Darius Smith. Za'Darius Smith, he does have that superstar dev trait. He does have a lot of experience as well, and he's a great scheme fit. He's a power rusher, and that's what we want in our scheme. I really love him at right outside linebacker. Anything that you can ask him to do, he can do just about everything except zone coverage. That's really his only iffy thing that he's got going on for him, but he can get after the quarterback, which is really important considering the lack of depth that we have on the defensive line. Linebacker is safe to say going to be our best position that we have available, and he's got multiple superstar abilities, so that's a nice bonus too. But our next couple of selections are actually both at the quarterback position. We start with who we selected from the Carolina Panthers, and we got AJ Bouye. He's a 9-year veteran from the University of Central Florida. He's got that star trait as well, and does really well as that slot corner. So he is listed as our #1 corner, but I really want to put him in the slot because that's really what he's best known for. That's really what I want to do with this particular player. But the other player that we also ended up grabbing, this is from the New England Patriots. We got Joshuan Williams. He's a 24-year-old from Vanderbilt. I really like his growth, and also somebody that's best in that slot. So we have versatility at the cornerback position. He's young. He's someone that we can develop down the line. Really want to get his zone coverage and man coverage up a little bit, but he's a solid tackler for a defensive back, and that's exactly what I want from someone that's also going to be a future starter for us. That's probably the best tag that I have seen from our expansion selections. After that, we do have our selection from the Las Vegas Raiders, and we end up grabbing a really good backup, arguably our best backup that I think we can get. We got Clelin Ferrell, the 4-year pro out of Clemson. He is a speed rusher, so does have the ability to get after the quarterback, and he does get the pleasure of sitting behind Za'Darius Smith, so he can possibly learn a lot from him as he progresses on. He is going to be a future starter. He does have that player tag, so he could very well be the future answer for us at right outside linebacker, or we can also kick him to left outside linebacker if Patrick Johnson doesn't work out for us. Keeping it out on the West Coast, though, we get the selection from the Los Angeles Rams. We got Bobby Evans Jr., 65 overall. He is a 4-year, going in his 4th season from the University of Oklahoma. More of a power blocker, which is a solid scheme fit for us. He is meant to be a backup right tackle, and he actually is going to be our backup, at least as of right now. He is going to sit behind Brian Beluga, or at least that is my initial plan. He doesn't have any player tags, but, you know, few years that I think we can sit back and grow this kid to be a future starter on our offensive line. Meanwhile, from the Baltimore Ravens out on the East Coast, we grab Broderick Washington Jr. We are going to kick him out to right end, so he can start opposite of D Ford, and he's going to have to really grow quickly. He's only 63 overall. We're going to expect him to start right away. This is his 3rd season in the NFL. He does fit our scheme pretty good, but that being said, definitely has a lot of question marks, and someone that will probably try to go ahead and address right away. He's not really a good fit for our culture necessarily, but at the same time, you know, that's just the thing with the expansion draft. It's going to leave some serious holes and weaknesses on our team here in year number 1. One position that won't be a complete weakness for us is the left tackle position, as we grab James Hurst from the New Orleans Saints. He's a 72 overall, but he is 30 years old though. So he is someone that is going to be a bridge player. We will need a future starter in the NFL draft or in free agency after this season. But that being said, he is someone that will be competent for us at the left tackle. He's got good strength and does have some solid run and pass blocking abilities. He doesn't have any particular weaknesses, but he doesn't really scream off the page either, and he'll be okay, but someone that I'll be looking forward to replacing after this season. Is a decent pickup for our offensive line though. But the best player that we are going to have on this football team though is middle linebacker Bobby Wagner, who was available from the Seattle Seahawks. 32 years old, he's a 10-year vet from Utah State. I'm expecting him to be our field general, and that's exactly what he can do. He's a superstar X Factor. He's the only one that we will initially have on this team. Great football player, 85 speed, 95 tackle. He can also cover in the open field as well. This is someone that I'm expecting to really set a defensive culture here for our new football team. And while he doesn't have any player tags, he does have the Avalanche superstar X Factor ability, and he's got a couple other superstar abilities such as Out of My Way and Tackle Supreme. So I'm really love this pick that we got from the Seahawks. He will help set the tone, and with him also being paired up with Anthony Hitchens, at least for our starters, we should be okay here for a little while. Up next, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we selected from, and we snagged their third string running back, Benny Snell, someone who I was always kind of impressed with. He is going to be our thunder back. He's someone that I think is going to get the tough yards, that will get the goal line carries for us, and he is only 24 years old. So this is someone that I'm looking at that could get a dev trade upgrade down the line. I really like what he brings to the table. Solid speed too. The thing with him though is he's not really much of a route runner. He's not as quick as Benjamin, so he's not as likely to get the home runs. But that being said, he can get a bunch of singles and doubles for us if we can block for him properly on our offensive line. After that, we have our selection from the Houston Texans, and like Houston, they are actually also in a rebuilding state, so not a lot of choices here. So we end up grabbing Jimmy Moreland here, the 27-year-old from James Madison. He is solid in the man-to-man. He's someone that I'm looking at that we could place on the outside, guard those perimeter wide receivers from other NFL teams. The big issue with him is he only has 69 awareness. Now, he does make up for it with having solid ball skills for someone that plays defensive back, that's 72 catching, but someone that I don't really see getting that much better. He's not really a good fit for us long term, but someone that will step in as our cornerback 4. Will probably get some spare playing time. After that, we got the Tennessee Titans, and we end up grabbing a pretty solid guard, Roger Saffold III. He is a 80 overall, but he is 34 years old. He will provide some good protection, and he does fit our scheme well. Will set a good culture for our offensive line, but our time is really going to be limited for him, right? He's 34 years old, and like I said earlier, guys after 30 are going to jump off a cliff, right? So he is listed as a mentor, so he will be someone that even after he declines, we will want to try and keep around so that he can mentor other players at the position. But Roger Saffold, I don't know how long he'll be effective for us as a starting offensive lineman. And the last player that we got from this expansion draft, we got from the Minnesota Vikings, we got Michael Pierce, who is in the prime of his career right now, 29 years old. He's got that star development trait as well. Really fits our scheme. He specializes as a run stopper, so he can command double teams, prevent offensive linemen from going up to the second level, but you know, this is as good as it's going to get for Michael Pierce. And while I think we're going to be able to sit back and, you know, get somebody that will end up being a long-term starter for us, you know, it's only going to go down from there. However, shout out to Sanford representing for the FCS here in this series. Now, one thing that you might have noticed in the upper right-hand corner is we drafted 32 players for this expansion draft, but we have 55 players on the roster, and how it ended up working out was just because how Madden is typically set up, right? I did have to keep some of the players that originally were on the Dolphins team. I kept them on, but, you know, those players that you saw drafted are going to be those types of guys that you're going to see at least for the initial part of this series, right? So we're going to go ahead. We see where we are. We're a 73 overall on offense, 77 on defense. We're a 74 overall. So we're definitely going to be in that lower echelon to start things out, but we're not going to be ridiculously not competitive, right? I think we'll be able to go ahead and sneak in a few wins here or there. I think that's a fair expectation to have going into this season. But what I will end up doing next episode, we will go ahead, we will play the entire preseason. We'll get a first look at our roster, and what we'll end up doing is, you know, we'll see these preseason games, and then I'll also kind of talk more about what sliders that I'm going to use for this series, because I know that this episode is already getting a little long, but guys, I am really excited about this expansion franchise, and not only are we going to build this team, I'm also going to have a surprise or two in here as the series goes on that are in the back pocket. So I hope you guys are really excited for this series, and if you are, I need you guys to do me a massive favor. Smack that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new to the channel. This is John J. Gaming on the mic signing off. Hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.